Good afternoon and greetings to our distinguished guests, the graduates, parents, and teachers. Thank you for that very warm introduction, and thank you for the honor of being your commencement speaker today. Though I am not with you all there because of this pandemic, know that I am definitely with you all in spirit. Congratulations, of course, to our dear graduates and the proud parents. I hope you won't let this pandemic hinder you from cherishing this very priceless moment. Goodbye, grade school. Hello, high school. Hello, teenage years. I had a lot of great memories when I was a grade school student at Westbridge. I entered Westbridge when I was in grade 2 and as a scholar of my grandparents. I was immediately famous when I entered because for my first 2 months I did nothing but cry every morning. I would make up all kinds of sickness and even go as far as vomit, and then I would suddenly just start crying. And I mean really, really cry. Mr. Soteo, Mr. Rublico, Mr. Giles, and Mr. Lakaya all know this very, very well. Thankfully, apart from quietly laughing at me, they, along with a good number of former teachers like Mr. Adalacion, as well as, of course, my parents, helped me get past that. With their help, I was eventually able to come to terms and explain that the main reason I was crying was because being a student in Westbridge was actually my first time as a student to experience being constantly alone in school. Now, I'd like to think that none of you guys were crybabies like me at one point during your grade school years, but I'm sure you guys had a lot of grade school experiences that involved your teachers and your parents coming together to help you out. In high school, this will slightly change. Your parents and teachers will begin to really encourage you more to be independent. Two things in particular. One, they will encourage you to be independent, God-fearing teenagers. And two, they will also encourage you to begin thinking about what you guys would want to be someday in preparation for being adults when you really are going to be completely independent from them. So my main message to you guys today is, during high school, focus or really take the time to keep these two things in mind. Your best lessons on being God-fearing teenagers will occur outside of the classroom. As teenagers, you will, of course, most likely begin hanging out in malls. Now, back in my days, SM City was the place to be for teenagers, although there weren't as much cool choices at the time compared to you guys now. We didn't even have Starbucks. If I'm not mistaken, Starbucks arrived in Iloilo City right around the time you guys were born. And for me, I was already in Manila at the time doing my bachelor's degree in applied physics. Apart from SM City, you guys now have Festive Mall, Atria, regards to SM City, an expanded SM City with so many stores that at the time, I wished were already there, because at the time they were only available in Manila. Now, I'm sure I forgot to mention a lot of currently cool places in the city for teenagers. Some of you may even think that the places I mentioned aren't the cool place to be. I apologize for that outdated information, because actually in the past 8 years I've spent less than 4 months in the Philippines. At one point I was gone for almost 5 years because I was completing my PhD. But crazy how things turn out, don't they? One moment I was a grade 2 student, afraid of being alone in school, and next thing I wasn't even home for 5 years. Now, in these so-called cool places, you guys will encounter some of your most difficult tests on being God-fearing teenagers. During grade school, your harshest tests were really written exams and religion classes. In high school, you'll of course still have these exams in your religion classes, but now you'll get real-life practical exams within these places. These practical exams will often involve your interactions with fellow teenagers and whether you interact with them in a way that upholds the numerous virtues that you have learned in grade school, like honesty, being respectful, decency, and the like. Also, while in typical in-class exams, your teachers will be there to correct you, tell you which is right, which is wrong. In this case, when you get things right, things are fine. But when you get things wrong, harsh consequences are bound to occur. Now, this clearly shows that these will arguably be your most important tests in high school. Now, this current pandemic should help to show you guys even more how important it is to be God-fearing. I'm sure you guys are experiencing right now how hard it is to cope, and you're also seeing how hard it is for the world, for the rest of the world, to handle this dangerous pandemic. But being God-fearing, now this will help you because we know that God is in control and that He will help us through this. As for figuring out what you guys would want to be, now this process will involve learning more about the numerous noble professions available in the world today, as well as learning more about yourselves. I am a scientist now because, one, when I was just a teenager, I really learned and understood how much I loved math and science. Then I also took the time to really know more about what it means or what are the challenges that come with being a scientist. And so I went out and tried to know more about the good side and those struggles. And after knowing them, I still found out that I wanted it. And so I didn't reach my dream of being a scientist because I was already a genius to begin with. I didn't even win an individual inter-school math science contest until I was, fourth year high school? I believe that was the MTAP contest. I also recall joining a science contest when I scored 2 out of 20. But I knew I was passionate over it because despite all of these struggles, and despite knowing what more struggles are to come, I still wanted it. I know my dad is very passionate in being a police officer because despite knowing the risks and dangers involved, I still saw him rise above them and is now known as one of the most successful police officers in the city. I know my mom is very passionate in being a doctor because despite knowing the risks and struggles, of course knowing that she needed to do an additional 10 to 15 years in school after college, I still saw her rise above them and is also now known as one of the most successful doctors in the city. You'll know a profession is your passion when the challenges involved in that profession drive you even more to excel in it. But again, first step would be to know more about these professions, especially the challenges that lay ahead, as well as to know more about yourselves. So again, my main message for you guys is that during high school, do focus and keep in mind these two things. 1, figure out how to be God-fearing teenagers, and 2, figure out what you guys would want to be someday. These helped her turn a grade 2 crybaby who was just afraid of being alone in school into someone who eventually wasn't even home for 5 years because he was traveling the world in pursuit of his PhD, and most recently, becoming an NASA scientist. Thank you, congratulations, and Godspeed into your teenage years. Ad astra per aspera.